Again, welcome to everybody. And today we have Faith to be presenting to us, and our AG, Henny Booters, is in from Ridgetown. And from the Satellite Club, we have Jennifer Jacobson in the background. She's kind of at work, so we won't bother her too much. But we'll start out with our birthdays for the month. We've got both Terry Smith and Brad Langford. And the good part is we don't announce ages on the birthdays, but on our club anniversaries, we do announce. Barry Fraser, who's with us, is 43 years this month with Rotary. Charles Seaman is here, 39 years. Doug Solomon was 39 years. Carl Veroba was 34 years. Moira Kerr, 23 years. And Tanya Sharp was 11 years. And hang on, just gotta open up for one more here. Okay, so that's we'll move over to happy thoughts. If we've got anybody with a particular happy thought, other than the weather is beautiful and we're not shoveling anything as far as snow goes. Does anybody else have something they want to share with us? Peter, please.
Just an update on the Guatemala stuff. Lots has been happening over the past 2 weeks. We basically had a meeting last Wednesday evening where with both the Barrias, which was the first project, and the P10, the second project, Rotary clubs. And we've decided to do the rollout for Barrias on the week of April 18th and the rollout for P10 the week of May the 2nd. So there's 1 week gap in between the two. And we also got a quote for the laptops. Laptops are like 80% of 80% of the budget. And they had increased in price tremendously during the pandemic, of course, when we weren't buying them, fortunately. So for the P10 project, we actually budgeted for $225 per Chromebook laptop. These are really basic, simple, low-level machines. And fortunately, the price has come down to $150, $155 in that range. And so we will be purchasing for the Barrias Club. Yesterday, we put in an order for 290 Chromebooks and they are going to not only be for the 15 schools that we set up this year, some of them will be given to the schools that we've set up in the previous 2 years when we've had fewer laptops, particularly the larger schools. So the idea is a school with 200 people or so will probably get up to 20 laptops. And we'll probably be buying somewhere 160, 170, 180 laptops. That decision will be made in the next day or two for the P10 project. And we've also been coordinating things with Serenina for the girl empowerment stuff. Their material will be ready by the end of March to integrate into the Rachel system. The Center for Affordable Water Sanitation Technology in Calgary has provided their material already to the Rachel people to get integrated into Rachel. Now we have to figure out how to use that. Kind of a gap there. But so things are moving along. If there are any questions, do let me know. I'll be sending out sort of a newsletter on the whole thing within a week or two.
Okay, Peter, just a question on that. The part about the water and sanitation, would that somehow be available for like the adults in the communities, or?
Yes, it definitely would be. Anything. By the way, I should mention, thanks to Jennifer for getting me involved in the Rotary and this whole projects to begin with, because it was Jennifer Jacobson who introduced me to this, and then of course Barry getting us going on the Guatemala work. Anyway, yes, anybody with a smartphone, tablet, or laptop, be close to the school, can download anything they want. We need to figure out, I have a call into a Vision for Clean Water, Eileen Heasley's group, to see if they want to set up some kind of project perhaps using Cost's branch plant in Honduras to set up something to teach the adults how to get access to the material. Because as I say, anybody with a tab with a smartphone, and smartphones are starting to appear even in these remote places, even with no cell phone coverage, which is kind of weird. You can download anything from these systems, any of the books, any of the material, because they're PDF files quite easily.
Thank you. Any other happy thoughts out here?
Oh, I can do a little brief here.
Sure, Henry, we'll take it anytime.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, I'm yeah.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
You're
you can
good.
hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just got last week Monday to
Whoop, now you froze.
few of the clubs, just like with AD links with head office. Yeah, and just like I got a good, actually, perhaps only Chatham has a tiny little nick sitting there, and I want to talk about it. It is just like minor, but I like to keep you guys on top of the list. So that's what I am. But in general, the review was really good from you guys, so I was kind of proud. Yeah.
Okay, I think. Diane McGuigan, how are you doing?
I'm not doing too badly, and I have the sort of the good news, the bad news. The good news is I have a second grandson born on January the 2nd.
Great, congratulations.
That's the good news in North Carolina. So the bad news is, how in the hell are we going to get there? So there, that's it. Everybody's doing well. They don't need us. That's just, I need it.
I think, yeah, I was going to say it's more for you than
right, exactly,
sure.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, good luck, and hopefully you'll get something worked out with that.
Right. Thank you.
Congratulations on the second grandchild.
Thank you.
And did I see any other hands? No. Okay, we'll move forward. I'm going to ask Karen Kirkwood White if she'll make our introduction to our guest. And hang on, I just got to set my screen up so if we need to share, it can be done. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Our guest speaker today has a bachelor's degree in sociology and a master's degree in education from Wayne State University, a bachelor's degree in education from Brock University, and a registered early childhood educator certification from St. Clair College. She currently serves as the executive director of the Skanew Family Learning Center, the first Indigenous-owned childcare center in the Southwest region of Ontario. As a founding member of Skanew, she has been instrumental in the ongoing success of the organization, which has evolved into 7 fully operational and profitable childcare centers in Ontario. With her 30+ years of experience in the fields of early childhood education, children and youth programming, community development, and Indigenous adult education, she has been recognized as a significant contributor in advancing the vision of leadership in both the Indigenous and mainstream organizations. She is passionate about urban Indigenous leadership and the advancement of Indigenous people in all levels of government. Some of her esteemed accomplishments include being elected and serving as president of local friendship centers, the development of local Indigenous networks advising municipalities on children and youth services, and the development of PEACE, which stands for Progressive Early Childhood Aboriginal Centers of Excellence, a network that provides professional development and advises the Ministry of Education on Indigenous early learning practices. I first met our speaker during weekly Thursday morning calls initiated by United Way of Chatham-Kent to establish several social planning and action tables, which brought together 214 nonprofit sector representatives together in the wake of the announcement of the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic in early 2020. Our speaker is involved in these Thursday morning calls and participates actively in the planning table, which is focused on Indigenous issues. It is called Monjitimi, which means we come together. And I was also invited to attend a strategic planning event last September at her beautiful heritage home on the Thames River. You will all know it as Bleak House, next door to Riverview Gardens on King Street West. Please join me in welcoming Faith Hale.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And, you know, when I hear you say that, I almost get butterflies when I think about, I don't always, it's humbling to be here with you. I have to say, in meeting Karen and Tom's story and some of you neighbors, I've learned so much about Chatham-Kent, and I'm just going to briefly, and I'll do this presentation in line where I'm thinking it works in my mind today, is that I'll introduce myself just a little bit more about, you know, the work that I do at Scunna Family Learning Center, and I'm going to move into the community work because I think that's what's vital to the work that you do and where we can find connections. Currently, we're building 2 childcare and early learning and community centers in Chatham-Kent. You will know the Wallaceburg site as Sam's Motel. So that particular location, we hope to have finished by the end of February, beginning of March. We will open, I'm actually opening it as we speak, the 8th and 25th childcare and early learning site over by the cultural center, dog park, that area. Those sites are 49 childcare spaces. And we talk about Indigenous led. And I just want to explain that because I think the government, through reconciliation and the work that we do, is doing a really good job at trying to understand what Indigenous led means. Indigenous led is just that. It's the business. It's the work that we do formally as Scunna Family Learning Center, but we service all rest of population. I just need people to understand that in urban areas, it's all inclusive. So yes, there is dollars set aside for Indigenous programming, support, housing, childcare, early learning. Most of it is federal, which is working with First Nations people. When you live and work in an urban design, urban area, where I've spent all of my life, the funding does not expand into urban areas. So we operate no different than any other nonprofit, profitable organizations, entrepreneurship, all of that. So as our childcares, I can remember starting childcare. I was in a Head Start program that was fully funded by the federal government back then, directly to a friendship center that I worked in. And that was back in the 90s, 1990s, and our funding was cut. And our program advisor came to me and said, you know, you do such a really good job in community faith. And she said, it's not just with Indigenous people, but all of the community. Would you consider opening childcare? And I said, absolutely not. Childcare is not even in my thinking back then, Indigenous, and that, you know, we prefer to have our children at home with their families. And Head Start allowed us to do that. We ran family programs. And we would, you know, take the children half day, but it was mainly to work with families with intergenerational and historical trauma, which we know today as being Indian residential schools and all of that. So she came back again and said, you know, there's a lot of families. And I thought, oh, well, we do have a building, so we could do something. So with $35, that's all we had. We went to the bank and we opened a corporation called Scunna Family Learning Center, and it was $35. Today, we're pretty near 20 million. So when you think about the good work, and none of it is government funded, we work as any other childcare in the Southwest region. There was a need. The funding flows where there's need. And I think you know that better than me, is that we want to deal with what are the needs of community? What can we do to build healthy and well communities in Chatham-Kent? Like that's my whole focus. I never knew, like I can tell you, living in and growing up mainly, and actually I'm from the United States. I'm Mandan Adatsa from North Dakota. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I had my first TV show with Mr. Rogers. I was 13, teaching Indigenous ways of knowing and being. You can probably pull that up. As the Hale family. And I grew up teaching culture with my family. It was just our way of life. in a large city, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as well as small communities. I grew up in a small community like Chatham, Kent, and bringing awareness. It was just, you know, a call that our family felt they needed to do, and we did it. And we did it with our Friendship Center, Council Three Rivers American Indian Center. So when I moved here in my teen years, actually, I arrived here when I was 19 years old, had my first child, didn't even know that there was a different currency, and I had to learn how to be here, we would say, as an immigrant. And I know people say that, they're like, what do you mean? You were just across the border. I said, it was different. So learning and being a part of the Indigenous community all of my life, working in community, being born into it, like it's just who we are, this urban center, urban design, and what makes sense for the people. So my passion for families and children and being with community has something that I was born to do. It's my purpose. I have an Indigenous name. It's Oda Nagabagish, and it means blooming flowers in the spring, and how my grandmothers explained that to me in ceremony, that it's when they pop. It's like a bunch all of the time. So all at one time. So when I'm working with children, I get to see them all pop all at once. Like all the infants, they all pretty much walk at the same time. If they're all in the same room, they're with preschoolers, we get to catch them reading for the first time, recognizing print. Sometimes they fall off the chair because they're like, I see my name for the first time. So it's when they pop. And I see communities pop that way. I see families and communities. I see, you know, I get to vision all of this, what this means for who we are. So it's so exciting for me to be a part of Chatham, Kent, which I believe cultivating growth from shore to shore, because I believe in growth. I believe in cultivation. I believe in really, truly what this means. And I grew up in a farming community myself in Pittsburgh, about 15 miles outside of Pittsburgh. And I knew the value of farming. It was just in us. It was who we were. And so I feel at home, you know, when I'm here. I say that a lot. And I also say that CK means cool kids. That's what I say. So for the most part, this is a hub to the Southwest region. That's the way I see it. And the work that we do supports Indigenous peoples in their transitions as well as mainstream. So our child cares will receive in our family programs all population. We will have a base of knowledge for Indigenous understanding, ways of being and knowing, which I believe are human. I don't believe it's any different than any other peoples. We're human, and learning and relearning our cultures through what we say today with reconciliation and reclaiming and understanding who we are, that there's a benefit. There's a benefit to community. There's a benefit to the individual. There's a benefit to families and to the aging population, which we see also in Chatham, Kent. So I'm very interested in housing. I've sat on provincial boards for housing, and we negotiated in December, and I'm not even sure if I updated some of you. Maybe you might know, but we're looking at bringing Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services to Chatham proper, where we might get anywhere from 6 new units to 100 of affordable housing. And again, they're an Indigenous-led organization. They house all populations, all peoples. So I think that's my bigger message today, is that when we hear Indigenous-led, you might want to work with them, because we're going to benefit all populations. And we're also going to bring funding that is necessary to do the work that we do to the community. So that excites me when I think about all of the work and how we can connect. I know Kelly Emery was here last week. She spoke about it in a meeting. I was with her this week. And the excitement, you know, in making those connections. And Chatham, I find, because I do represent in other communities like Sarnia Lambton as well as Windsor Essex, the need to connect is so vital to the work that happens. And I actually thanked Chatham Kent at a lot of my meetings, that when there wasn't any funding flowing, and still to this day, we have no provincial or federal funding to deal with Indigenous issues. I promise you that, like we do in Sarnia and Windsor, Essex. You stepped up, you did the work, and our people had care. And I think that is so important to for me to say, this is a safe place for us to grow Indigenous-led industry as well as all other industry. And I hear that. I just heard it in a meeting before I joined you, was that there's a trend. There's a lot of people moving to Chatham, a lot of people. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with future growth? And at the level of what it's happening, and how do we also create spaces where we can be well within community? I had some exciting conversations with people out of Ottawa just recently around reconciliation spaces. So I want to talk a little bit about reconciliation and what that means. You may know it, may not, but reconciliation is something that the federal government has mandated to work towards any municipality or people who receive government funding for the most part. And reconciliation to Indigenous people, there's 94 truth and reconciliation calls to action is what we call them. I work with about 4 or 5: education, early learning, childcare, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and the Indian residential school, what that might look like, how we will heal from that. 60 scoop, and now we say the new millennium scoop, which is again apprehension of Indigenous children where they're not in their community and connected to their families. So how do we do this in a good way? So that's a lot of the work that I do. And we know when we have missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls that those are mothers of our children, and it happens. So we're overrepresented in all areas of concern today in Chatham-Kent. So if there's a stat that you might hear about housing, we're 8 times higher to be underhoused as Indigenous people right here in Chatham-Kent. Apprehension of children through child protection services. The last stat I heard, it was like 4% higher than rest of community. Yet we have no one working specifically in those groups. So it doesn't surprise me that we would still be overrepresented. So these are, why we need to do the work that we do to build more Indigenous programming. The provincial government will fund so long as your nonprofit board or your organization is Indigenous ran. So we, maybe a year and a half ago, created in the community 7 Generations Cultural Friendship Center. So you do have a friendship center now. It isn't completely operational simply because it takes funds to hire people and do that work, but we are doing a lot of the foundational work. We have a president, Guy Williams, who is a member and lives in Chatham-Kent, works for Fanshawe College. We have a number of very interested people on the board in the work, bringing the necessary resources for housing and supports for people who live in our houses and community, and the retention of education, our culture, our ways of knowing and being. So 7 Gen is here, as well as Scunna Family Learning Center, which is another Indigenous-led organization I spoke about earlier. And we have Women's Equity Business, which is a response by women to missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. And that particular business helps women in business, of all women, again, Indigenous-led. So we have helped people through this property that Karen talks about, the Bleak House, to retain employment and to continue in their line and life's work as well. To develop community is what we're doing. So that's a lot of the work. We've partnered with our municipality, with other entrepreneurs and business owners in the community. TJ Stables being one, who's now running a 7 Grandfathers program and has hired on Indigenous people to work with the spirit horses that they have. And that was John is a Métis man, but it took some work and relationshiping to get people to understand the spirit horses and the healing and the wellness and reconciliation centers or spaces that we call them in urban areas, and what that design would look like. In Ottawa currently, there's 700 trees that they want to clear cut to build a parking lot for one of the hospitals. And we're working collectively to preserve those trees as reconciliation spaces where community can go in, all community, and be close to the land. And we call learn off of Mother Earth and land-based learning. Because if we destroy everything for parking lots, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult in the future to heal the way we believe human beings need to heal, and that's outside. We use our brain 8 times more when we're outdoors versus indoors. And I think farming communities know that. We do well. So brain work is a big deal in our population, and why we need to consider even working in trauma. I do a lot of work with trauma in the early years around reconciliation, and again, with historical and intergenerational trauma, and what that looks like, how it presents itself today in community, and why we would be overrepresented in a lot of areas, including our youth, including suicide and policing. So this work is why I believe this presentation is happening, to see where you fit and what can we do, or to even just keep building a healthy relationship with agencies and groups that have an understanding and awareness and want to be a part of growing Indigenous population in urban area in a good way. So I'm going to pause for a moment because that was a lot, and that was just from my heart. So just to take any questions, I know we talked, for some reason I thought I might present twice in a few weeks, you know, here and there, just to, if you have something and you have a specific topic, I can do a little bit of research on and bring it to you so you would understand. And some of you are probably knowledgeable. You know, I don't know all of you personally, but I do know that Chatham has done a really good job at educating people, and you know, there are First Nations populations within the urban design and setting, as well as on their own First Nations. So I did hear that, well, we won't talk about that, we're recording, but people do come and go, right? And we do connect, and we have relationships. So I'm going to pause.
So would just a short break there. So maybe catch yourself a drink of water or something. But we do have you scheduled for a second presentation, because I can already tell you've got so much to tell us that we would need a significant amount of time. So thank you very much for agreeing to come back. And you're not allowed to cancel that next one, because you would drive my programmer a little bit crazy. And so no, we're going to hold you to the second one, and definitely look forward to it. Are there any questions so far at this point? I think we're, oh, Tom, please have to take off your mute.
Hi, Faith. Can you describe to the group your plans for the Bleak House and how you see that, as you described it to me, although you don't have the 45 minutes you took to explain it to me before, but it was interesting. I think most people here are familiar with the home right next to Riverview Gardens, and the various functions you see, you know, we talked about it as being an Indigenous hub, and how you see that, what that concept means.
Absolutely, Tom. The Bleak House, again, it belongs to Chatham Kent. We're here just caretaking. And what we find here is that the spirit in which, how the water, there's a good current that comes by here, but we're explained that that's where all the cleaning happens for our spirit, like who we are. And I say Antler River. I know people say Thames River, but I see it as Antler River, and the Indigenous people as well. And in the reclamation of the work that we've done is this hub supports Fanshawe College students. It supports people here in the land to connect them. There are small groups of counseling that happen from time to time. Our offices are here for Scunna Family Learning Center, Women's Equity Business, 7Gen. So a very small, groups that come together. Sometimes you'll see a teepee. I hear there is a sweat that's going to take place. And all of that is to keep balance, right, in the work that we do for our own healing. And what we're believing is you should be able to heal in your own backyard. And, for many, many years of being underground and not being able to practice our ways of knowing and being, we would retreat to the bush. We'd go to the bush because we could be arrested and put in jail, by the way. And today we have our full moon ceremonies. That's our women's teachings once a month. They're happening right here. We have Liz Akowinzi, who is part of Ontario Health Team, and she's one of the Indigenous knowledge keepers and Nokomises who helps with healing. So she also sees rest of community. So, we didn't want people to have to travel back to the First Nation or to an area where, would be more remote, and building the hub here made sense. And, there's a lot of issues with communication on our First Nations, and our students were struggling during in the colleges, just keeping up when we shut the first time, everything closed. They had no access to internet, and a lot of them failed their semester simply because of internet access. So we knew that we had to build a hub in town where they could have and retreat to have education. So there's some interesting things. There's going to be two documentaries filmed at this location this year. One is on healing from human trafficking, and the other is Cultural Killers, Cultural Healers, which is Indian residential school. Cultural Healers is being done by a 36 award-winning documentarist, Emmy award-winning, out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he's an amazing man. And the work that we're doing is, for Chatham, that shines a light on Chatham as well, but it's truly helping others to heal. So I hope I did that okay, Tom. There'll be more time, but you come here. It's for you as well.
Thank you, Faith. Anyone else have anything they want to pop a question at this point? Kind of partway through. Karen, please, and then Allison.
I don't know whether you know the answer to this question, but the warming center at St. James Church opened in Wallaceburg this past week, and there was some involvement on the part of an Indigenous individual to help out with that warming station. How did it go?
It went very well. We opened Rock Missions, Scunna Family Learning Center, UWalk, United Way, as well as with some funding from the municipality, opened at the church. Yes, Joe's cooking. We have a fellow from, I believe, Walpole, who's doing the cooking there, small meals. And we also have a nurse that's coming from Scunna Family Learning Center staff, who's there to work on site with, people coming into the warming center that might have frostbite, may need to have some care done, on the spot. When you're living in, temperatures that can be harming. So what I did here is we had families, and that's a big deal. And this isn't Indigenous. Again, this is populations. And, when we think about, who goes into a warming center, I knew that we would probably have some people who are living in situations where they need to go somewhere for safety when the weather is tough. And so it may be that, a place where, we wouldn't recognize, the people we think that would be there, that we thought. So Scunna Family Learning Center is there to support families and children, and to support with our nurse on staff right now. anyone who has maybe some harm that's been done from the cold, the extreme weather. So it's exciting this weekend. If you're around that area, you can drop in. There's wonderful things happening, but it is a time of where we do believe people need to find safety and relationships. That's what's exciting for me. Building trusting relationships is what we're doing in a population that I think are sometimes not seen and not heard. I hope that helped, Karen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I know that they were doing a soft launch or a soft opening on Friday, and I hadn't heard since how things were going. So appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Please.
Just a quick question, Faith, how do we stay up to date about what's happening? Do you have an e-newsletter or social media, or what's the best way for us to sort of stay informed to know what events are coming up and how we can stay in the loop?
Currently, we have Legitimate, and I have the spelling up there next to my name. Legitimate is the network that's all of the community partners coming together, Allison. Currently, we haven't put out an actual notice, but what we are working on is an action plan currently with a retired professor from University of Windsor, Mary Metcalf, some of you might know, and this action plan will be made public. So we're almost finished, and it came from Chatham-Kent. We did some research over a year and a half now, and that research has now created this action plan, and the action plan will inform community on the work that we're doing. What I can say, September 30th, 100% is the day of reconciliation, but also Indian Residential School awareness. So that happens September 30th. We also will begin to have vigils around missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, which are two very large calls to action. But for the most part, as our organizations grow, we will be getting information out into the community. Anyone can join Legitimate, and it is Thursday mornings, 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock is when we meet. And you can drop in, come anytime, hear information, be a part of our planning. It's open to all. So anyone who's interested in this work, join Legitimate.
This is part of the social planning and action tables that meet every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. So there are a number of breakout groups, and Legitimate is one.
Thanks, Karen. And Barry Fraser, you had your hand up.
Good presentation, Faith. Further to maintaining connections, when we can start moving around a bit more, how do you set up having a visit to the center here in Chatham?
Oh, you can contact me directly. Yep.
Yes.
And you can come. Yep. We're outdoors, so we follow all of the rules, right? Of screening, what we do. It is a business, but we definitely, if you contact me, we'll be able to set something up. And I had hoped that we would be in person this time. Didn't know we'd be locked down again. So I'm believing that, and I'm hearing it's an endemic. So we probably will be opening up before too long. I'm thinking maybe another 8 weeks and we will be good to go again. So that's what I'm hearing, because I work in childcare and that's what they're saying, but you never know. So, but I look forward, Barry, and anyone, if you want to visit, I can set up to visit the property so you're able to see the work there. And for your own group, I don't know where you meet on a regular basis. I haven't visited your establishment, but I think Karen spoke to it. It's a beautiful place to visit and do your own work, even if it's, strategic planning. Indigenous people do strategic planning, but it's done outside and it's beautiful. And we do a lot more. So, when you're thinking about how to connect to land and what that looks like in our future planning, I would encourage you to get in touch with us. And we do also do work around trauma and trauma-informed communities. And there is a larger presentation that we could do for your group where you would understand our actual I would have to say, tools that we use to keep balance in community and wellness in our agencies. So you may want to take a look at that as well in the future.
Well,
Would
Faith,
be an opportunity to have a Rotary meeting at Bleak House at some point outside in the summertime. We should plan for that.
well, further, Faith, perhaps you could send the connecting links to President Brett, and he could move that out through to the membership.
Yeah, I can do that.
Great, thank you. Okay, last call on questions here. Okay, I think Faith, you have a bit more you're going to enlighten us with. Of course, I've got to throw one comment out there, Faith. Karen, in her introduction, said something about 30 years in childcare. Did you start at age 2?
No, I'm a grandmother of 7.
Ah,
No, not at age 2. Actually, I'm 57. So
we weren't asking.
I know. I'm almost, my sister says, you're almost a senior. I said, yeah, almost.
Well, welcome to many of our club.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll turn it back over to you for anything else you would like to share with us, please.
I think just in closing, we talk about land acknowledgement and what that means. And I don't know if the Rotary Club has one that you're thinking about or that you might want to do. We can engage in that. So what does that look like? Myself, I'm not so, I have to say in favor of a written document, but, we just acknowledge the land. We acknowledge that the territory of the Anishinaabe people who have held and have taken care of this land for many, many years. And we acknowledge the waters and the life that it gives us and our sustenance and our Mother Earth and our food that it grows. And obviously the animals that give us shelter and food as well, and our clothing. We acknowledge the plant life, the trees and the sky world, and, all of this and how we relationship and we're connected. And so, in my thinking that if you're wanting to explore that and what that means, that we can definitely help you in doing that. And some may say, well, that's, like a prayer. Or I think it's an acknowledgement to Creator and to the greater things that honestly we don't have control over. When COVID happened, and you might be interested in this, we had ceremony as mothers and women, and we do that once a month. We pray for the water, we pray for our children and family as we get well. And the grandmothers in another circle were praying, and we had asked, like, why COVID? This is before science told us why. And they said that it came from the animals to wake us up, to warn us, to let us know we have to do better. We have to do better as human beings. And what they said was, the land, Mother Earth, does not require human beings. The plant life does not require us. Animals do not require us. We require them. Water doesn't require us. It's going to flow. So we need to consider as a whole what we're doing. And I took that personally for myself to do better. So, there's just so many things of how we're connected and how we relate. That's exciting for me. It's exciting. And one day I'll teach you about our framework, Minima Bazuin. But, when we're in our power life at the age of 49 plus, and which that means is that we're able to give back to society, to our families, to community, our knowledge. And it's time for us to share. The power people need to come together, and that's not the government. The power people are 49 plus who have this experience, who really can give life to what's happening, and to connect with our youth, that they see the vision of going forward and their life in Chatham-Kent, and how we can celebrate and bring joy to community in our work. So I only go to places where I can celebrate and have joy. I have to tell you that is my goal today for myself. If I feel good and I have joy and celebration, I'm going, and I'm going to keep going. where there isn't joy in life and celebration, I won't be there. So I think that's who we are as a people and what we bring. So
Okay.
Brett, I think I'm done.
Well, we really want to thank you for taking your time, and we do look forward to the next event. Could I ask a quick question with regard to the childcare things that you work on? Are you seeing anything? Is it going to be possible for the federal government to get childcare down to like a $10 a day situation?
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
Oh, absolutely. Actually, this is surprising, but Indigenous childcare on First Nations, they don't pay anything. And if they do, it's very little. It's
Mhm.
always been that. And that's just Pequejonon, Moravian town. So there's equalizers. I think it's important. Quebec, I've done a lot of work in Quebec, and with their childcare, $10 a day and what that looks like. The difference is, and I think childcare is a very expensive service in community, but necessary. And even if a family's paying $10 a day, it's still unaffordable for some families and 2-income families, especially if they have 2 or 3 kids. So, myself, I would like to see, and this is one of the work, this is why we do what we do as Scana Family Learning Center. We don't want families to pay for childcare. We truly believe that childcare should be a choice of families and everyone have access, no different than the school. That's the way we feel. But again, it's costly, and I don't know how we're going to make it come about, but it's been our vision why we do what we do. So Brent, good, that's a good question, Brett. And really, I do see it, it's doable. BC's doing it. I sit on their national boards for decision making, have done planning, and we've been pushing for many years in Ontario. Ontario is a very large province, and honestly, Toronto, it sets the standard, and childcare is not affordable and accessible in big cities. Chatham will probably do it fairly well and quickly, but I fear for larger communities like Toronto, you just won't be able to deal with it. But yeah, it's doable, and I do see it in the next, I would say 5 years. Will I still be around? Probably not. Probably retire by then, but I truly believe it's a good vision, and we will get there. We will get there. But next step, let's have childcare for everyone, and no fee. It would be great. Thank you.
Thanks on that. Any other questions for Faith then? Okay, we're all good there. And again, thank you so much. We can definitely see your passion for the community as a whole. Everybody's inclusive, and that's great. And we look forward to presentation number 2 in a couple of weeks' time. And
Wonderful.
Again, thank you for joining us today. And sorry, it's by Zoom. We do hope at some point we're going to get back together. We just don't know how or when, and definitely want to keep everybody safe. So that's the biggest thing. Next week, our meeting is going to be our AGM. So I'll be sending out some financial stuff for you, and I'll get that out to you hopefully right away. And if you've got any questions, send me a note on it, because not currently having a real treasurer in place might take me a little bit of time to research what your question might be regarding. So it'll be the profit and loss and balance sheet up to June, actually June of 2021 is what we're clearing out. But our bookkeepers, Elizabeth Fields and Denise Brower, do a pretty good job at keeping us up to date. As I mentioned last week, we did get our CRA filing done for our service account, and to keep our charitable status in place. So I haven't heard anything back other than they have received it, and so hopefully that's good news. Dues for our last quarter is coming out today. That will include lunches, and if you weren't part of all of the lunches, you may be getting a due that helps cover some of the other costs. What we had in place when I came in was to cover, I think, if you weren't there, you've got to cover about 60% of it. So there's still some costs that may come out. And we have to cover things at Links of Kent, guaranteed meals, things along that line. So although Links of Kent were quite good with us on our 9 weeks that we were there, we would estimate, because quite often we had to guess as to how many we thought were going to show up, and we weren't too far off, but we did not have to go to the 30 meal minimum, but we did have to pay rent on the facility. So we were stuck with that. Let's see, we did receive a hefty invoice from our district for dues for January to June. So we'll be getting that taken care of. And RI has their dues about to come out. And that's basically it. Does anybody else have anything? Allison, please.
Just a quick note, I don't know, I came in a few minutes late, Brett, if you already mentioned this, but tomorrow Jennifer Jones announces her theme. Did you mention that already?
No, I didn't see that. I did see in an email that came out that Jennifer Jones is going to do a coast to coast to coast Canada tour, and looking forward to having that. As I mentioned, we were on a sector meeting last night, and I think tonight I have and there's another meeting. I think that's for exchange students. But anyways, Jennifer will also be announcing where she's going to be close. We were hoping to have a banquet possibly in the April-May time period before she took over, but I mean, her schedule is so crazy that, but we did have conversations with her assistant to say, keep us on the list, and we'd love to have her if she was going to be in the neighborhood. So I don't know, maybe we'll get lucky and they'll figure London and Windsor could all come to Chatham and we can meet her when it's safe. So, but I mean, everybody's quite excited for our next RI president. It's, you know, just, we're all going to be able to say, we know her. She's from
Yeah,
Windsor.
she
just down the road."
apparently she announces at 9 a.m. to all the district governors, because I think they're normally in their training right now. Barry would
Oh.
know. And then so we'll be allowed to hear it. They get to hear first. Then
Oh,
I
great.
think by 9:30 Eastern time, the rest of us will get to hear her theme and her logo and all that stuff. So stay tuned tomorrow.
And then we'll look for the marketing and see if we can buy socks or banners or something. Thank you very much, Allison. Anything else for the good of Rotary? Okay, I'll call the meeting adjourned, and thank you all for attending. Thank you, Henny, for coming in and giving us a little bit of your time.